Work it harder, make it better, do it faster, makes us stronger more than ever. Hour after hour, work is never over. Work it harder, make it better, do it faster, makes us stronger more than ever. Hour after hour, work is never.
Hello, welcome to the Snob and the Slob. We just saw X-Men. I have to say, X-Men was my favorite when I was growing up, especially Wolverine. Wolverine was the man. I always wanted the claws. I was wanted the indestructible adamantium skeleton.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I actually went and I had the doctor's graft on adamantium onto my skeleton. So now I'm indestructible.
Why would you do that? I mean, Magneto is clearly the best person to emulate from the series. I mean, he's awesome. If you're gonna get some power, come on, be magnetic. You control all the metal in the world. You know, you'd be unstoppable.
Why would you want to be Magneto? Look at that loser. Look at that stupid helmet he's wearing. He looks like a
Stupid
nerd.
helmet. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. Unstoppable.
You have the chance to become part of something much bigger than yourself.
What do you know about me?
Everything.
So we're reviewing X-Men First Class, and this movie takes us back to the 1960s when two of the main characters from the previous trilogy, Charles Xavier and Eric Lehnsherr, aka Professor X and Magneto, are young men. Charles is just getting out of Oxford University studying genetics, and Eric is on a quest for revenge against his Nazi oppressors from World War II when he was in a Jewish internment camp as a child. Now, the movie kind of follows through with their meeting and the conflict between their two viewpoints about how to deal with mutant-human relations and their training of a first class of students under them of fellow mutants. Now, your thoughts on this movie story as a whole, initial impressions?
It was the tale of two movies. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Let's start out with the best.
Okay.
Xavier and Magneto, everything about them was awesome. Their story, the actors that portrayed them, sort of their interaction with each other, their role in the movie, it was spot on. It was great.
Definitely the movie's high point. I had no idea who these actors were. I guess I hadn't seen them in anything before, but I didn't think they looked like they fit the roles at all, but I mean, that powerhouse performance right there.
Tomorrow, mankind will know that mutants exist. They'll fear us. And that fear will turn to hatred.
Not if we stop a war. Not if we risk our lives doing so. We have it in us to be the better men.
We already are.
Now, the great thing that this movie did that the last few X-Men movies haven't is they really focused on the politics of the situation. Like, the whole X-Men mythos, I guess, is based around, you know, sort of a minority oppressed group. Now, Professor X is the, you can see it as a metaphor for the civil rights movement. Like, Professor X is the Martin Luther King, the more pacifistic, you know...
Magneto is Malcolm X.
Yeah, he's Malcolm X. Militant group fighting against, you know...
violence to counter violence.
Exactly.
Sort of
now,
guy.
that really came across in this movie, just the difference between their viewpoints and how they got to where they are in the past trilogy.
It shall be the policy of this nation to regard any nuclear missile launched from Cuba as an attack by the Soviet Union on the United States.
They're just kids.
No, they were kids.
You ready for this?
Let's find out.
The worst of times. This was, besides those scenes with Magneto and Professor X, absolute garbage. The storyline with the teenagers, the acting done by the teenage characters, the script, the dialogue.
Okay, now
the
who do you have a problem with? I'll agree with you on the effects. We'll get there in a minute. But They used up most of their star characters in the original trilogy.
Yeah.
They're all in the 90s. They can't bring them back and use them in the 60s. So they had to bring in a new cast.
You asked me who do I have a problem with? It's really I can name you the one that I didn't have a problem with, because basically everyone besides that I did.
Okay, go on.
Beast. The guy that played Beast was it seemed like a genuine character, a very sympathetic type of character. Oh shucks type of guy. I bought into that.
Yeah.
I thought he did a good job.
Yeah.
The other actor, January Jones, was awful. She was just as bad.
Was she Emma
was
Frost?
Emma Frost.
Okay,
she was just as bad as she was in an Unknown.
Oh yeah.
I could go on and on about the different characters and the problems that I had with them. Some are fanboy rants and some are other things. For example, Havoc was supposed to be this really dangerous guy that they had locked up in solitary confinement. They made a whole point of making this big scene like he's the only guy that likes being in. And then he turns out to be this blonde, pretty boy, kind of smart aleck guy. There's no edge to him. Don't get me wrong. Havoc in the comics was a ladies' man, so I don't mind him being that sort of character. But when you make it a point of introducing this guy, he's like, you know, he's really tough and he doesn't work well with others. He likes to work alone. And then you do absolutely nothing to show that or like have him develop from there. That was pretty weak. But you know, like I said, I could talk about the characters all day long.
Yeah, okay, the students were the weakest part of the script, but I thought that this movie, written in part by Bryan Singer, the director of the first few movies, now, I thought this was a very tight script overall. They did what they were setting out to do, and I think that, like, there were big payoffs for everything they set up for. I mean,
in a way, I agree with you. I agree that the story was well told. It had a point to it. It showed not only the origins, but sort of like the reason and the rationale, and gave Magneto great motivation. My problem was a lot of the dialogue. The dialogue was at like the definition of ham-fisted. Like the times when they made it so that it was we don't like the mutants. It was basically them saying, mutants, we hate them. And basically they just moved on from there. There was no reason for these guys to hate these mutants, and yet they were just like, oh, look at those mutants, they suck.
The thing that it comes down to, for me, not only, I think, was this movie better than X-Men 3 or the awful, awful X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Won't get an argument from me.
Okay. To make a prequel that actually adds character depth and makes me care about the characters in a different way while still maintaining general amounts of continuity with the original and adding depth there instead of just like regressing characters and making them go through the same character arc they did in the original movies, that's something to be said and a very difficult thing to write, and I applaud them for being able to make me really engrossed by this movie, and I had a fun time watching this movie. That's what it's all about. Yeah. I mean, like, there were some awful lines there occasionally, but I didn't think they were as numerous as what you said, and there was enough star power and the characters I really cared about on screen enough to make. I mean, Magneto was a badass.
He was awesome. Like, I think he acted in about 6 different languages. I think he gives Christoph Waltz a run for his money. Yeah,
so I mean, like I was along for the ride. I was never checking my watch like I was in like those past few X-Men movies. Like, I mean, it was a good all-around package, and that's all you're going to get from me. Now,
I said, I can totally agree with you in terms of the story, and like you said, being a prequel, making it compelling, as in particular the Professor X and Magneto parts. For me, it was the ancillary characters, as we discussed.
I guess, not as strong as the rest of the package, but didn't bother me enough to detract from it.
A new species is being born. Help me guide it. Shape it. Lead it.
Time for the tour.
You have no idea what I'd give to feel
Normal.
You want society to accept you, but you can't even accept yourself.
Should we have to hide?
You could definitely tell that some of the effects were really rushed. Banshee's voice sometimes looked cool and sometimes looked really bad. Mm-hmm. The makeup on Beast was awful. Beast looked like crap.
Now, you said you didn't like his design. I thought he had a kind of interesting sort of preteen Beast or like a Teen Wolf Beast vibe, that because you know you see Beast, he's always older, he's like middle aged in the other movies. I mean, like the design itself, but the makeup effects around his face were awful. Like when he tried to talk, his mouth did not move in the right way.
I just wonder, honestly, since they're coming out with Rise of the Planet of the Apes this later on in the summer, I'm curious to know whether or not they just took one of those old Planet of the Apes costumes, painted it blue, and put some red lipstick on there, and said,
no, it wasn't that bad, but it was pretty noticeable.
It was close. I mean, it was pretty bad.
The cost of freedom is always high. No one can foresee precisely what course it will take. One path we shall never choose, and that is the path of surrender.
Listen to me very carefully, my friend. Killing will not bring you peace.
Peace was never an option.
Alright, quick summary from the Slob's point of view first. I thought that this movie had a lot to offer in terms of the Magneto Professor X storyline. It was really engaging, really gripping. I think everybody should see that. I thought that the rest of the movie, as I've said over and over already, was pretty much your standard Fox movie in that it was pretty much garbage, but the storyline involving Professor X and Eric was worth it. It was pretty awesome. So it's really hard to put a grade on this. Like, because one part of the movie is an A and one part's like a D plus. Do I average that out, or do I just give it what I thought based on each? So I would say, you know, go and see this movie. At least check it out on a matinee, because some of it is worth seeing on the big screen.
Alright, now, from my snobbish point of view over here, I went in with the lowest of expectations with this movie after awful experiences with the past two in the X-Men franchise. Now, I didn't even get to a point where I'm like, oh yeah, this is pretty good. I was engaged the whole way through. I had an awesome ride. I thought that, as I said earlier, with like how difficult it is to craft an engaging prequel that keeps you guessing and you don't quite know how the characters are going to end up how they do, that's very difficult to pull off, and they did it for me. I wasn't questioning anything that happened, really, in terms of that major storyline. And yeah, there are some foibles and bad, you know, sort of amateurish young actor acting along the way, but it's a fun action thrill ride, and I had a good time all the way through, and I'm gonna give it. Yeah, I'd recommend going to see this movie. If you like X-Men, I'd pay full price for it. But I mean, catch a matinee, why not? I'll give it a solid, B. It's a good movie.
Round 2, Mantis style, fight.
What did I tell you last time?
Mantis style, go.
No.
All you used to do was put me down, but I found a way to pick myself up off the ground. And all you used to do was criticize me, but now I find a good and I emphasize it. See, you would always get so sensitive and try to turn your transgressions into mine.
Awesome, the comic book fell too.